Not too much of a surprise in terms of like what we knew leading up to this decision, but the numbers that come afterwards, big time surprise. So AJ Dybantsa, the number one prospect in high school basketball in the class of 2025, committed yesterday to BYU, which in a vacuum, if you had told me that a couple months ago, I'd be like, wow, that's a shock. Yeah. But there was certainly some real momentum there. Now, the figures that come out after, Adam Zangora had this, had him at making anywhere between $5 and $7 million to play 1 year in Provo, Utah. We've heard some big time numbers in football, Sydney. Of course, that was going to come to basketball sooner rather than later, but $5 to $7 million?
That would be so nice.
It's great work if you can get it. And he didn't hire an agent, so they're keeping all of that.
That's insane. For like an 18-year-old kid, too.
For an 18-year-old kid from Brockton, Massachusetts, man.
Crazy.
It's not a bad life. BYU. This is what we talked about when BYU was coming into the Big 12. Massive fan base, big endowment, massive alumni. They own a religion when it comes to major colleges, okay? They've even got offshoots. They've got BYU Idaho, formerly Rick's College. They've got BYU Hawaii. They've got them everywhere. And now we are seeing that come to fruition in the NIL space. Let me start with asking you this before we get into the Baylor side of it, the Big 12 side of it. Is BYU like a true sleeping giant? Is this the last that we're going to hear about BYU spending just buku money on some of the big time basketball prospects?
Specifically with basketball?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll have to put this in there too. Dybantsa was playing high school basketball in Utah. So it's not like he's coming from the mean streets of Brockton right to Provo. And there's a lot of those schools now. A lot of those big time prep basketball schools are in Utah.
I feel like this is not the last time we'll hear about this, but I do feel like it's going to be a once in a while kind of story. I don't think Provo is somewhere that everyone has on their list, but when you have ties to it, I mean, I get it. I haven't gone to games, but I covered Colorado State playing Utah State, and the Utah fans that would travel to Colorado State were incredible. And we sent a crew there while I was in college, and they came back saying it was one of the best environments that they had ever been to. And I think that's easy to sell on somebody who wants that. And if you're only there for a year, don't you want it to be the most fun? Don't you want to pave your own way or to leave behind a legacy of sorts? And if you have the opportunity to do that, why not? And I think those were probably all factors that went into it for him too. But I don't think it's going to be the last time we hear about this for BYU, but I don't think we're going to hear this every single season.
And you will, by the way, when the BYU swarm comes in whatever sport it is, because we didn't get them at all this year. I guess we'll have them in basketball. I got to check the schedule. Maybe not, but they are one of the best fan bases in America. And in basketball, you'll have 15, 20,000 there every night.
Yeah.
And it's electric there. So I can't blame them on that end. And looking at it from the Big 12 perspective and from the Baylor perspective, because we've talked about this, but Baylor basketball was way ahead of the curve in NIL in terms of their peers and way ahead of Baylor football, which is one of the only schools in the country that happened at, that basketball was way ahead of it. And clearly they're not in a spot where they're, struggling. They brought in, I think, 2 pretty big time NIL guys through the transfer portal this year. They certainly have to have NIL for 2 top freshmen in Rob Wright and VJ Edgecombe, but they were on Dybantsa's list for a long time. It was really only the last month or so that they fell off of that. And you look at that figure, $5 to $7 million. And not all of that's coming from the school, but they obviously have a big hand in that.
Yeah.
Can a school like Baylor, because this is obviously more common in basketball than football, those small schools that can really do well, Baylor, Villanova, Duke, can those schools, do they have the NIL space to keep up if the numbers are going to get that big for one and dones?
I think they do.
Okay. Positive Sydney here.
I don't know if you've been ahead of it. I don't know if you're not going to see 5 million every year.
Mm-hmm.
But if
hopefully not. Yeah.
That's a little crazy.
That's a lot, man.
A lot of money.
Not that he doesn't deserve it or anything like that, but that's just a crazy figure.
I think big picture, you've already been competing with it and keeping up with it. You're not going to get every kid. It's not going to happen that way, nor do you need everyone that you look at. It's good to have those number one guys or whatever, but you just need guys that are going to be a part of your culture and be a part of your program and contribute to that. You don't need to pay a kid $5 million every single time to bring them in to make a difference.
And I do wonder the worth of it all to kind of close out these thoughts here. It's
we'll see that.
Yeah, like, I mean, we've seen Baylor the last couple of years get some of the best one and dones in the country. Like, Yves Missy's making a push for Rookie of the Year right now in the NBA.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen it, and it doesn't always work, you know? I mean, this is a team that's lost in the second round 3 straight years. So is it it's going to have to be a worth thing for these schools to say, yeah, I mean, he's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft, but I pay him $5 million and he gets injured for a couple of weeks, or we have another injury for a couple of weeks, or we get a bad matchup in the second round, and all of a sudden we're not even playing into the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Like that's where it's different than from football. Football, you've got them 2 to 3 years, and you've got opportunities to, you know, it's more of a power balance versus, you know, a single elimination 68 team NCAA tournament. So I feel like at some point it's not going to be worth it to bring in that kind of star power. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Thank you for making it to the end of the video, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network part of your daily routine. We have got you covered with the most Baylor Bears athletics coverage of any outlet that's not directly tied into Baylor University. So if you want more of that, be sure to like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and sic 'em.